Welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning into my channel. This is Eric Owens coming at you from Eric Owens Art. And today our project is going to be a bolo tie. So I was a scout leader for a long time. I think I spent 37 years as a scout leader, and I've made hundreds of these bolo ties. In fact, I'm more than 400, I think is how many I've made. Anyway, we're going to work on that today. These are not just bolo ties for scouting, although I like doing them for that reason. There's are bolo ties for people to wear. And if Christmas, you have a bolo tie for Christmas. You have one for Halloween. You have one for patriotic days and whatever. But I'll show you how I do those. I like doing these just because they're small faces. I mean, we're only talking about 2 inches. And when we talk about 2 inch face, that gives you enough room and enough space to put details in it, but not too small that you can't put the good details, eyeballs, wrinkles, stuff like that in there. But anyway, we're going to do this bolo tie, and I'll show you how I carve these and what I do with them when I'm done. And I sell these on my channel on my Etsy and or eBay shop. So we'll have a little bit of fun doing some of that. Maybe I'll put some of those up here because I've still got a handful of them left over. Our church no longer sponsors Boy Scout troops, and so we cleaned out the Scout troop closet and got all the stuff out of there and passed on all the stuff from the troop to other troops. And now I don't get involved in scouting because I'm chasing all over doing classes and doing art shows. But anyway, I enjoy doing them. I still enjoy doing them. I still do some. I've got a bunch of them hanging over here on the rack, and we'll sell some as we go along. The good thing I like about them is you can do just about anything. I'm gonna reach down here and grab a bag, not a bag, a box, because I got everything here from. Got them all tied up here. Native American. Pull this out here. I'm kind of disjointed today. I'm starting later than I wanted to. Mandalorian, for those of you that like Star Wars. Here's another Native American face with a headdress. Here's Uncle Sam, and I've done a video on Uncle Sam before. So anyway, let me get rid of that pile. Show you just a few more ones that I enjoy doing. Some that people enjoy doing, and I enjoy doing ones that kids love a lot. Here's Hulk. You can do cowboys. They're always popular. Let's see, Iron Man. I basically do some of these just directly from pop culture, so movies, cartoons, comics, things like that. There's BB-8 from Star Wars, and I've got a whole bunch of them in here that I won't drag you through, but I may show you a little bit here in just a little bit as we get into carving. But anyway, let's carve. Okay, here we are. We're looking straight down at my table. I've got it set up to where I can kind of keep myself right here in the middle. And if I get off the point that I want to be on, I'll have to mentally smack myself. Again, I like these things, and I've done a lot of them in all kinds of different sizes. I used to just use scrap wood. Now I cut them out of some of the good wood that I got. And I do that because I want to go from a standard size so that I know where I'm at. So this is a standard size. It's 3 inches tall. It's 1.75 inches wide. Here's the, sorry, 3 inches tall, 1.75 inches wide, and 1.5 inches deep. And so that gives me an opportunity with this little pattern here. There's the 1.5 inches deep from back to front. You see that hole that I drilled for the bolo tie. So front to back is 1.5 inches. Across that side is 1.75 inches. And then standing tall is 3 inches. And I like to use good wood. I find the best wood that I can use. And I like this Northern American basswood. I get my wood from a couple different sources. Tom Checkett's out of Salt Lake. If you're ever down around Rocky Mountain or Utah, Colorado, whatever, Tom goes to all those places and delivers wood. I like it because he delivers wood. Excuse me a second. he delivers wood here to the Boise Treasure Valley area that I live in, and when he does deliver to stores, he'll have extras left over, and he'll call me and see if I want any, and I usually buy some from him. But you can also buy good wood from Heineke. You can buy good wood from Amazon. You just got to be real careful what you're getting, and you can get good wood from Treeline USA. They're just down the road in Provo, about 6 hours. So a lot of places to buy some good wood when you're ready to do that. I laid him somewhere, and I had my Uncle Sam laying here, or my there he is. Gosh, got too many things on my table. So there's one I want to do today. It's the Baden Powell. Baden Powell is the founder of Scouting. Founded Scouting in 1908. I think in America it was started in 1910, if I remember my numbers correctly. But we're going to do that one, and I'm going to show you how to do that. This block is just a little bit smaller than this one. So when I lay it over top of that and I go to the edge here, you'll see that there's a little bit more over here on the edge. Let me get that straight up and down so you can see. Right there. So the ear sticks out a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch. So this block should be about 1/4 of an inch, but I'm using the standard size, and I'm gonna use that standard size simply because I just want to go in to cut wood from a block of wood that I've got, and I don't want to do a lot of standing out there finagling, rummaging through boxes to find the size I need. I take the little pattern I have, take it out there, I lay it on the wood. If I've got room for all of that stuff, then I'm good, because I can lay that on a block of wood. And if it's 3 inches tall, 1.75 wide, 1 inch deep, I can do that out of a block of wood. And it gives me a good way of doing so. Now, a lot of times I have patterns on these things, and I have a pattern where you can just draw around the pattern. I don't have a pattern here, but if I lay that on the top here, I can roughly draw a few pieces, a few lines. Holding that down, here's the outside edge of the ear to the face. Here's the outside edge to the bottom of the face. Here's the hat. He's wearing one of these, what we used to call a campaign hat. And so right there at the top, I can draw straight across, and there's his brim. I'm going to take that brim all the way out to the edge. That's going to give me plenty of room to do that. I've got an ear that comes somewhat down like that. So if I just draw these lines, kind of hard to see sometimes when you're just looking straight down. My wife gets on to me all the time about do it in a marker so they can see it. So I'm going to do it in marker. You're welcome, Mama. So I'm going to draw in the brim. This is the one fragile part of the carving. It could get broken off on you if you're not real careful. So the ears, I'm going to do the ears here like this, and the face is going to come down like this, and then in. So if you've ever seen pictures of Baden Powell, let me grab a couple of pictures that'll let me know what I'm doing. So find some internet pictures that you can get, whether they're Pinterest or Google Images or whatever. These are a few that I picked out of what I found on the net, and you can find he has a thin mustache, thin face. It's got a real square chin like that, and so we'll use this as an example. And I've done a half a dozen to a dozen of these, I think, over the years, and I enjoy doing that. For those of you that want to carve but are not sure how to get started, this is some stuff that I found on the internet. And I don't know, it's been a long time since I printed this, and I don't know who did it, but my thanks to them for doing that. But when you look back at the history of bolo ties, people like Gary Dollar, Guy Nelson, and especially Bill Birch, they have done a lot of carvings over the years. A lot of these bolo ties, and most of those folks give them away. A few of them will sell a few to pay for going to summer camp or going to jamboree or whatever. But these were all inspired by one carver or another, and most of us got inspired by Bill Birch, who operated out of Spokane for a while, then he was in Utah for a while. But anyway, here was the step-by-step how to get the generic face for doing this. So you block in the ears on a block of wood that you have. You cut in the jaw line. You round off the top of the head. You give him his hair and his style. Looks like they carved the ears about that time too. So block in the face, keeping the nose wide because you can always make it smaller. And then you get the finishing touches where you put the mouth in, the ears, the smile lines, and all that. And then you got a lot of these little, some of these scout leaders. This is Smokey the Bear. I got other stuff thrown in here I should probably take out. But some pop culture pictures you can go buy. BB-8. I can't remember that one off vendor. I can't remember the name of the robot. C-3PO, Thor's hammer. I've done a couple of those. People like those. I did some robots for a while, and so there's a lot of examples of robots, and I could show you all kinds of examples, but I think what you tuned in to watch was carving. Here's some of Bill Birch's or Gary Dollar's, some of their stuff that they did. They've done tons and tons. I think by the time Bill Birch died, he had done more than 80,000. Gary Dollar and a few others like that have done upwards of 40 or 50,000. My friend Guy Nelson out of Salt Lake has done about 8,500, almost 9,000. I don't think I'll live long enough to do that, but we're going to have a little bit of fun while we're doing it. Here's the Baden Powell style from Bill Birch. So we'll do something a little similar to that. Mine will look a little different, as they should. I should not be copying somebody else's, and you should not be copying mine. You should be copying yours. You should be doing your kind of carving that you want to do, and spread that joy and the love of bolo ties. I used to give them away to kids that I saw doing the right thing at summer camp. I especially gave them away to adults that I saw doing the right thing when they had to work with kids. They were positive and encouraging rather than critical. Anyway, I sold a few to fuel buying more wood and more supplies, and I've given them a lot of them away. I think I've done about 400 of these, so certainly not as many as some other people have done it. But I enjoy doing it, and like I say, I don't have a scout troop anymore to be involved with, so I don't have any way of doing that. Which I'm not going to randomly show up at a scout meeting and say, "Hey, can I give you something?" Anyway, we're doing this. This is Uncle Sam. Here, a couple of Uncle Sams here. Here's a Baden Powell, and they're different size faces. You get them smaller, larger, whatever. Here's one that I enjoy doing. It's a astronaut. So the astronaut, he gets the little lights coming off the side, got his face and his sheet, or the having a brain fart there for a minute, having the light ports that shine out so they don't have to hold a flashlight. It comes off of their head. So anyway, we've drawn this one laid out. I'll drop them all on the floor before I'm done with it here. All right, let's do a little bit of carving. Here's what we're going to concentrate on right today, and here's where we're going to start. Again, as I always state, grab your safety gear. If that is eye protection, do that, because some of you may do this with a little bit of power or sand it down when you're done. And grab a glove. I use gloves get off the internet. This is an A8, which means it's almost as strong as you can get without poking yourself. I saw an A9 the other day in a kitchen store. They wanted a lot of money. I didn't buy one, but you can certainly spend a lot of money on stainless steel gloves, but I buy these off the internet, and I reinforce them with these little rubber tips that I put on there. I sew them on, and then a lot of times I'll wrap them with vet wrap like this. So here's more of those little fingers that you get off those rubber garden gloves. I cut those off, put them on here, and it gives me protection of 2 or 3 layers. And so you can see I've cut into it a little bit. But I want to make sure that I'm protecting myself, because carving and then hurting yourself is never, ever what you really want to do. Some of the tools I'm going to be using today, I'm going to use a V-tool. Here's a medium-sized V-tool from FlexCut. I'm going to use a file gouge to gouge out a few things. And I'm going to use a straight bladed knife. Generally I use a little bit longer, about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches. This one I think is about 1.25 inches. Oh, I really want it a little bit longer, but we'll do what we can with that. I'm going to follow the lines. Take off my protection because it's hard to draw when I'm holding on to that. Follow these lines here, and that'll give me an idea right there of where the brim's going to go. Now I'm going to carve part of that brim to start with, but it's also going to be one of those things where I have to be real careful because it's real easy to break off that brim. When you're doing this, you got to be real careful carving up because they'll break it off, and then carving down it'll break it off as well. So I'm going to just draw a couple lines here, and I don't really care where those lines are, just as long as I can keep them going. On the top, I'm going to have about, see where I come in this far? I'm going to follow that back. That's going to be about where the hat ends and starts. I've got this other line right here, and so I want to follow that line back. That gives me plenty of room. I've pre-drilled the hole. It's a 1/4 inch. And that's the hole for here. There's another hole that I put on the tips. I think that's I think it's 3/8. I don't know for sure. We'll see if I can show you that later. But I'm going to start by carving the hat. And I'm just going to go simply by using a V-tool to outline the lines that I want to carve deeper. It's great if I can use a V-tool. And that way I can use that V-tool to basically remove the lines that I've drawn, because if I like where they are now, then I'm going to like where they are carving. So I want to stay right in there. I want to use this as an erasing tool. I got the line on there. Listen to the sound of that wood. I love the sound of cutting wood. Okay, I want to do that top part of the brim right there. So I don't want to do the bottom yet because I want to relieve. I'll be carving that face around, and I don't want to really get mixed up where I'm at and forget to leave that brim standing proud, because I want it to be strong without breaking off. Okay. I didn't draw on the top what I wanted. Basically, this hat, the campaign hat, has a round brim, and then we come up here like this. And that's what we're going to cut all the way down to the brim. So it's going to leave us quite a bit of brim out here that if we break off a little bit, we still have room to do that. Okay, so whatever tool you use to remove wood, I'm going to start off by just trying to take off a lot of the bulk on this head. Most of you know that I'm missing a couple of fingers on my left hand. My thumb is missing a piece, half of it. My middle finger is missing quite a bit. And so it makes it difficult, especially as I get older. I'm having a hard time gripping. And so when I go to do this and I grip, my fingers slip around. I bought a pair of gloves, really, they're A9s, and I bought these, and I like them, but man, they are stiff. It's only about 12 bucks, but this palm handle right here is really stiff, so I can use it for holding things when I'm carving, but I get lost in it. I can't use the right hand to carve because I'd lose all the feeling of being involved in manipulating my knife, so I can't really get in there and do that. So I know a lot of carvers that teach go really fast because they know what they're doing, and they've done a dozen of these things to start with. I don't know that I'm going to do that. I've come to the conclusion that this is all about building a relationship. And maybe it's a relationship between you and your tools. Maybe it's a relationship between you and the wood you bought. But it's all about relationships. I'm trying to build a relationship with my community, carving community, and I met several of you when I was down at the Rocky Mountain Carvers Roundup back in May. And the biggest thing I heard from people was, just carve, just show us what you're doing. We enjoy the journey with you. just carve. And so, again, I've said this many times. I don't make any money off of this. I have a little bit of money that comes in off of my web page for the ads that run on there. And I don't rise to the level of making money through YouTube. I could. In fact, just in the last few days, I thought, well, what does it take to make a living or make money off of YouTube? Because people ask me, say, why don't you do it so you make money? Well, this isn't about that, number one, and then the hoops you have to jump through to do that. I don't. It's like I'm chasing something I don't want to chase, and I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to remember to stay in my dot right here. I enjoy doing this for the fun of it. It's like I've said a lot of times to my students when I was teaching, everybody ought to have a few things in life that you can count on. One of those is something you care about. And maybe you care about carving. That's the most important thing to you, and you care about that. Well, that ought to be right up at the top of what you're doing. You should have something that you love, and maybe that's your family, maybe that's your community, maybe it's your customers or whatever. But you also should have a purpose. And so when I talk about having a purpose, I talk about the reason you get up in the morning to do what you do. I get up in the morning and I spend a lot of time carving. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and carve. That's my purpose. That's what I want to do. That's what I enjoy doing. And I've been a teacher for a long time. Most of my adult life I have taught something. When I was first in the military, I joined the military at 18. I got stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland, in Washington, D.C., where National Security Agency is located. And so I went to military school there, and I would go to the rec center in the evening and have a good time. Some of those kids weren't much. We were close to my age. I was 18 years old. So some of those kids were, right around that age. And the rec center helped them out a lot because it gave them a place to hang out. I'm going to switch knives here in a second. I'm trying to carve over here, and my blade is not long enough. So let me reach in here and see if I can grab a tool that I want to work with. And I think I'll grab this one. Right. This is my OCC tool. I think this one is 1 7/8, maybe 2 inches, but it allows me to reach all the way across it and carve that. Anyway, they saw how I interacted with the kids and joked around with them and whatever. And so I was asked if I would help. They didn't pay me, but if I would be a volunteer staff member to help kids. And so on Friday night, they would close the gym and use it as a skating rink. So I would skate around with the kids, acting like a skate guard, protecting them, but also helping them, learn how to do things, because I was a fairly decent skater at the time. But they also had me teaching kids how to use the electronic typewriters, because back then we had manual typewriters where you hit the key and the key came up and struck the paper. But we also had electronic ones too, where you had to change out the balls and you had to know how to format things like that. So they had me doing a lot of different things that I enjoyed doing for the kids. So that was my first thing at teaching. I did the same thing when I went down to Texas. I was at a military base that had we called it the FF&G, the Food, Fun, and Games building. That was actually the name of the building. It said that, Food, Fun, and Games. So you could get a burger, you could get something to eat, you could play video games, pinball, and all that. But it was a lot of fun doing that because I got to hang around with people that had the same interests that I did. And then when I got overseas, I was fairly proficient in the language. I wasn't fluent. I was a language interpreter when I was in the military. And so I got to be able to help some of the younger folks who came in and weren't quite as proficient at the language as I was. So then I got into teaching with scouting. We had a scout troop over there, Troop 107, and we were one of the honor troops in the council, Transatlantic Council, which is a good thing because you only get to that point when you've really done it right. And so I ended up spending a lot of time teaching kids, taking them camping, and camping in Germany was a whole lot different than camping in America. In America, you go up to the national forest, open your car, and you camp right there. In Germany, they had forestmeisters. So the forestmeister took care of the forest and made sure that people didn't graffiti the trees or whatever. And they used to brag that every forestmeister knew in his area, he knew every tree, and when it lost a branch, he knew exactly which branch it was, where it came from. And so we had to have a plan whenever we went camping, and we had to make sure that whenever we lit a fire, it was in a hole underground. So you had to dig down, a couple, 2 or 3 feet or whatever to be able to get a fire. You see what I'm doing? I'm bringing that hat down. Excuse me. And so I'm trying to get to the first level of that campaign hat. I still got room down here. I still got wood down here I need to take off, but I want to get down to that first level of the campaign hat. Well, part of that is getting the corners off. And so what I want to do when I do this, I've got it 3 inches tall from top to bottom. I've got 1 3/4 across, and I've got 1.5 inches deep. And so what I want to do is I want to make this to where I take off the corners, because I don't want to do the details until I'm ready to do the details. And to do that, I've got to remove some of the wood that just take off those corners. What is it, about a 45-degree angle, something like that? When you look at human faces, you realize that for the most part, our face is a wedge. So the front of the face, when you carve down here like this and put a nose there, the face comes out like that. So it's some kind of wedge. And then when we also carve the face, we also look at a diamond shape, because when you're looking at the human face, for a man, for the most part, his widest spot is out here, the cheekbones. And so you have to take that into consideration. Here's your chin. I'm going to come down here. I mean, the ears are in here. But I've got a wedge, a diamond shape here on the male face. And then when I'm looking straight down at the top of the head, here's the head, and I'm looking at the face coming out like that. Here's your nose. Farthest point out on the face. I'm looking straight down at the head. That's the piece that sticks the farthest out. So you don't want to have a face that looks like this. You don't want a square face. You want those corners taken off. Before you start adding a whole lot of details, that's where you should be. Find out where your nose is, how far it sticks out, what shape it's going to be, and then make sure that you got this rounded head, because right in here you're going to have ears somewhere, to whether they're closer to the front or the back, you're going to have ears, and then you got the back of the head. So remember those. Pardon me, I got a frog in my throat. Remember those things that we need to know. So right here, what I want to do is I want to bring it out to a wedge like that, but I don't want to remove all that, because until I move this back, I still have way too much of the brim around the head. So I end up spending a lot of time setting up the hat. And I'm going to just go back here, and I want to flatten that hat from the first point up. From here up, I want that to be straight up and down. I don't want it to be at an angle. I want to go straight up and down on that hat, so that I can narrow down that campaign hat. Sometimes so what I'll do is I'll carve a little bit, and then I'll come back here, and you see that wedge there goes into the angle. I want to take that angle off, because I want to make sure that this campaign hat fits his head. From that first part of the brim up, I want to make sure that I am doing that where it's flat, rounded, flat. So I didn't get all that over here. And so when I'm done with that, I'll have crept all the way back to here for the top of the hat. See how much room I've got back over in here? So we're just going to carve a little bit more. Keep an eye on the timer, so I know how long these videos are. I don't like them to go too long, because I know people say I don't watch them anyway. I just fast forward it, or I turn the sound off, or whatever. So I don't want you to have to try to make a decision on whether you watch or not. I want you to feel comfortable doing that, coming back to it. That's the great thing about YouTube, is you can YouTube sorry, YouTube, where you can pause it, go back, pick up something you might have missed. Okay, I want to get that first layer of the campaign hat, this first layer right here. I want it to come straight off. I'll navigate that band later, but I want this first part to be up there, and I won't worry about this part yet. So I just want to get it to where it's where I need it to be. And so I still got some more to take back, because I haven't really taken much off of the brim either. Come on. Apologize if you've been trying to follow me a little bit regularly. I've been dealing with some health issues that I'm trying to work through, and it's going to keep pushing that back because they need to get this doctor to do his part, but he can't do his part until doctor number 3 does his part, and then doctor number 3 schedules me to come in to do that, and all of a sudden 3 schedules it out, and 1 and 2 now their schedule is off. So my wife, bless her heart, she's fighting between all of these doctor visits and timing and schedule and everything like that. So hopefully we can get it all squared away, because one of them will say, well, we can get you in on the 7th of next month, and then you schedule that out, and then there's a prerequisite to that, and then they'll say, well, we can't get that in till the 14th, and so you got to go back to the one on the 7th and say, can you change to the 14th? And if you've had health issues and you had to deal with insurance and all that, you know what I'm talking about. But we're trying to work through and make sure it gets at work, because we're about to the point where we do our first show of the year. We do it next in a couple weeks, and so we'll do our first show, and then we do one a month going through December. And I'm hoping that some of these things will line up so that I can do that and still go to the doctors and still do the show and be where we need to be. So you see how it comes up and it's square off that way with just a little bit taken off. I want to take a little bit more off. I'm still leaving the brim fairly wide and fairly square, because I don't want to take too much off of there. I mean, I can certainly make it. I end up with this, the one I'm doing, I'll end up with a face about that size. I can certainly make them smaller. I don't want them too small, because like I said at the beginning, faces get too small, I get really, I don't necessarily like them. But if we look at how long this one is, anything around 2 inches of the length of the face, from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, I can handle those. I like those. Those are about right. I'm doing a carving for a friend that wants a carving of his grandson, and when I initially said yes without really knowing, and so I've got a 13-inch tall carving, and I don't normally do carvings that tall, simply because I'm using palm tools. I don't really have a whole lot of room and a bench vise to hold everything in place. I probably would have said no if I knew it was going to be that tall, or ask him to make it smaller, but I can tell you that will be the last one that I do, because I don't like real heavy, hard carvings like that. So we're on our way. We've got the hat kind of blocked in, but not completely. We're going to bring that down to the brim here. So I would just take my V-tool, and I want to carry that line out. And this is where we're going to thin that brim out. And so I wanted to say, be uber cautious from this point on, because I'm going to make that brim, it's still fairly thick. Pardon me, I'm going to take a second to get a splash of water. Appreciate your patience there. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my V-tool, and I want to give that line some shape to it. And I want to go straight across, following the bottom of the brim, knowing that I'm then going to take some of that brim down, because I'm going to go from this point here up a little bit, and that top line is going to end up being about that thick. I want to leave it this thick right now because I really don't want to break that brim off. A lot of times when you do that, you can fix it. And hopefully it's not visible to your customer, and you've actually, when you put a dowel in there or something like that, you can actually make it stronger. Glue works too, but I don't want the customer to say, oh, that was broken, so you need to give me another one. You know, if I don't break it to start with, I don't have to worry about that. We're going to make a cut right in there on the bottom of that brim. Follow that cut all the way around, make that cut about 3 or 4 times, because I want to make sure that line is cut in. And if I make a stop cut here, I can be fairly certain that most of the time, if I'm not too heavy-handed, my cut will go right up to that stop cut. Now, I know some people that only use a knife, and you could certainly do that with this. I look at it like this. Okay, I've got missing finger here. I've got this finger was reattached, and I'm missing half of that thumb, so it makes it hard for me to grip everything around. And so therefore I have to use the tools that I can use if I have them, and if I don't, then I have to plan it out. I made that cut all the way around, and I want to come back here with my knife. Start off with my knife, and then I'll eventually go back to the fishtail gouge. So here I am, and this is kind of an awkward way of holding things. I know some of my friends do a lot of flat plane carving, and so they end up doing it by pushing with the back of the thumb. I don't have the opportunity to do that because I don't have that thumb there. So for those of you that want, you can do it with a fishtail gouge. And so I'm going to just take the bottom off right here, because I got to leave room for the ear, which means I don't want to take this off and not leave any room for that ear. And so I'm just starting to use a fishtail gouge. Now, I got this real thin one here that I've had for a long time from Drake, and I like it, but I'm just a little bit nervous sometimes when I'm afraid I'm going to break it or whatever. So I'll go to a bigger one. It's a file number 5, and so it's about a number 5 sweep and about 3/4 of an inch across. So here I'm falling into my bad habits of pulling it down here where my chest is. I don't normally carve like this, where I'm way out here like that. So anyway, I'm usually carving right up here because my elbows are right there. Having to carve out here, do a video. It's just the way it is. I enjoy carving, and I enjoy doing videos, so I'll do whatever I have to help you guys out. So I'm going to switch back to the knife because it's getting a little bit across the face that I don't really want to get over to yet. Be careful when you do this. You're carving up into the fragile part of the hat. So if you're going straight in and it's straight across like that, then I'm fairly certain that it'll stop right there. If it's at an angle like this, I'm probably going to smack up into that and break that off, and I don't want to do that. All right, we're going to draw in the ears, or at least the plane of the ear. I don't usually spend a lot of time working on ears because I figure they're, if it's that bad, you can cover them up with hair. If not, you can just, make the minimum of scratches or whatever you need on there. You don't need to do a whole lot, but you do need to have an ear there, unless you want to cover it up with hair, which is a whole different ball of wax. I think the CCA is coming out with a book on hair this year. I'll have to weigh and see whether it's. I don't want to buy a book just to collect it. Although having said that, the bookcase over here that's got plenty of them in there. Okay, take that line out, and also know that in just a little bit you'll take off more of this wood. So right now what I'm doing is just leaving it I'm drawing with my tool. Okay, so I've drawn in there what that is. I'm going to come in here with my tool, my knife, go straight in 90 degrees. If you need to take off an angle, we'll take it off later, but right now we just want to get in there and get that cut in all the way to the brim, and then I want to cut in to the back of that brim right there. Just push that straight in so that I can then go and cut off that side of the face and make the ear stick out. Whether you carve straight in like this, or you carve straight in like this, or you carve down like this, either way, whatever you got to do to make sure that ear sticks out. I do one side at a time. I know a lot of people talk about how they move back and forth and they do this and they do that. When I'm doing things on opposite sides, if I made this ear stick out more here, I got to come around here to do that. So I don't want to carve them at the same time and then find out I got more off of here than I do here. I got to come back here. Now I'm trying to balance that. Let me balance it when I'm doing it. And so I'm going to go straight in. And I'm giving it that diamond shape because the cheekbone is somewhere right here. So it's going to plunge down in that way and plunge back here. And so I come back here to the bottom of the face. Give it a little bit of shape so that I know what's going to come later. And I want to bring that knife cut all the way over to the ear. Okay. So whether you do that with a knife or you do that with a fishtail gouge, that's entirely up to you. Fishtail gouge, you have a tendency to slam into that, so be real careful how you do that. I'm just going to... I heard a carver say, yeah, I'm a flicker. I flick chips out like that, and I do that too. Just be real careful that most of it is cut off, because when you go to flick it, if it's still attached, a lot of this will come off like that right there. So you just got to be real careful about that. Anyway, where was I? I was removing this wood here. So I'm going to make this plane fairly flat as I go from the bottom of the brim to the bottom of the face. So I just want to make sure that I'm taking off enough wood so that when I look at it from the side, that ear is sticking out here. And by the time I clean that up, I'm going to have room for a sideburn on the side if you want that. And I'm just going to continue just trimming that down. One of my last videos, I had a problem. I'm using DaVinci Resolve as an editing tool when I'm done carving, and I had a problem with lip sync. We did everything we could. We checked the forum, we talked to people, sent them questions, and they said just make sure the frame rate is all the same throughout the video. Well, it would be about a half a second lag, and it didn't show up on my computer. It didn't show up on DaVinci when I was exporting it. Didn't show up on YouTube when I was exporting it, but when my wife would turn it on to watch it, she would have a hard time with voice and lips being out of sync. And for some people that's a big thing. Personally, for me, I just figure it's just the way the program is, and you just deal with it. But my wife wanted to make sure that I'm putting out the cleanest video that I can, and that was one of the things she wanted me to clean up. And I had no problem with that. I just need to make sure I do that. So on this one, I'm looking at changing to a new program. If any of you have ever used OBS Studios, I'm going to be trying it out here soon. Here's where I'm doing it with the fishtail gouge, simply because I can get a different angle to it than my knife. Anyway, I'm going to try and see what that ends up being. I spent a lot of time learning how to do one program, and to throw that away and start to learn another one means that's more time I have to spend away from the carving table. And if you know me, you've heard me talk about it a lot. I enjoy carving. Don't really enjoy playing with computers. It's funny, when I graduated high school in 1980, tells you how old I am. I had a lot of kids. There was, valedictorians and speakers and whatever from the student body. A lot of the kids talked about their future, and most of them talked about how their future was going to be involved in computers. I personally did not want a doggone thing to do with computers, and I joined the Air Force and flew airplanes and did missions and did my thing, and had very little to do with computers. By the end of my time in the Air Force, they were starting to switch over to the computers, and I thought, whew, dodged that one, didn't I? Anyway, the less time I spend having to work on a computer program, the better off I am. I use computers, for my social media and my emails and checking the news and that kind of stuff. I don't really enjoy having to learn all these new things, because when I look at the DaVinci program that I'm using, it's got a lot of functionality, and some of that makes zero sense to me, because it'll have a title of this, and I go, okay, then it'll do this, when in reality it doesn't do that. It does something totally different. All right, I want to keep this to around 30 to 45 minutes. We're at 42. I'm going to stop this video right here. This is where we're at. We're at the point where we're starting to carve or cut in the ears. I did this side. I'll do this side in terms of depth, and then when we come back, I'll do that side again, and we'll start to work on thinning this brim, and then we'll work on where the face is, because the face is going to come right here down the middle. Here's my line. I want to keep that line for the bolo tie, the cord. Follow that all the way down, and if I do it right, should be right in the middle, all the way down to where the cord is. So I'm off by a few millimeters, but not a big deal. But I want to aim everything towards being that. All right. Thanks for playing along with me. We'll put this in off on the computer, render it, do all the editing, whatever we need to do, and then we'll come back with the next one just as quickly as I can. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for being here. All right, we're back again. Part 3 of getting this Uncle Sam Bolo Tie, or Baden Powell Bolo Tie. I started working on the face. I know I need to thin down the brim, but I'm going to do that later. I want to start working on this face, getting it down to this wedge that I talked about. So looking straight down from the top of the head, I want this to come out like that. I want to have that wedge coming out. That'll give me a place to stick my nose. Place to put my nose. I stick my nose in a lot of places that don't belong, but neither here nor there. Okay. So I want these ears to be about the same width, and I'm not going to worry about getting a set of calipers or a measuring tool or whatever. I'm going to eyeball how wide that is here and how wide that is over here. So I know this one's thinner than that one, which means I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to make that same cut that I made earlier, a couple, 2 or 3 times. Then I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to cut that out. Undercut that, well, not undercut, but cut that. Because I'm not starting the wedge back here. I'm starting the wedge in front of the ear. So we'll I don't want a real big face here, so I'm going to cut back some more of this. And I'm going to just take it off the sides, and I'll bring the front to match the sides. Okay, see how deep we're getting in there? I'm going to take a V-tool and just clean that up just a little bit. I don't know how deep I can get in there, but some of those fuzzies that get down in there. Okay, that looks okay here. I'm going to make sure it's over here, the same rough estimate of depth. So we'll go back here. Roughly about the same width from here to here as it is from here to here. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take off this part of that face, start to give it that wedge, and I'm going to ignore the hat because I don't want to take more off the hat. That hat brim is looking at about right. I want to take more off the face because I want to bring that wedge to it. So number of different ways. I could come in here with my fishtail. I could come in here with a smaller fishtail. I could do it with a knife. Depends on how you carve. Most of you will talk about being a knife carver, and I probably feel the same way. I do most of my carving with knives, and I've heard people say, well, I don't want to be a tool collector, so I only want to use a few. Well, I met a lot of tool collectors in my life. Down at Salt Lake, I met several people who admit that it's a weakness with them, that they enjoy collecting all these tools. And I'm not going to say anything about that because I don't have to walk in their shoes. Like I tell my wife, I want to be where my feet are planted. My feet are not planted in collecting tools. In terms of collecting, they're in terms of getting what I need. So some of my V tools I've had to kind of retire because I've not found a way to sharpen that particular V tool. But yeah, I try not to look at a tool thinking I need that. I try to say, well, what's the reason I would need that tool? Why would I need that tool? I don't. And so the problem with that is, if you're a tool collector, do you have a toolbox that you keep everything in? Are you putting them out on display? Do you carry them all with you every time you go somewhere? I can tell you that'll get old because carrying them around, you're toting a handful of tools that you really don't use very much. And every time you buy more tools, you have to figure out where to put them. So I know a lot of people have plastic boxes, one box for the V tool, one box for the gouges, one for the knives, whatever. Now you become an organizer and not a collector, not a user. For me, that isn't where I want to be. I have tools, and I try to sell them when I have an over surplus, because sometimes I'll buy another tool that I want it I want it an inch longer handle, or I want the blade to be a half inch longer so that I can use it better. But I try not to just buy a tool as a knee-jerk reaction. Nothing wrong with that if that's what it is for you and you can afford that. I have since I started doing videos, I've retired, and I'm don't have a lot of disposable income. And so when I talk about buying something, I have to give myself a good reason. I have to figure that out, and then I have to actually then reevaluate whether I'm going to use it or not. So something to think about. Starting to get that wedge shape a little bit. I got a flat pointed area right here. And we'll address that here in just a little bit, but I'm trying to make them match on both sides in terms of how far back I'm going. Know that this is going to move back here quite a bit because there's the farthest point out. I need to move part of that back, and I need to move the hat right here. I need to make sure that that hat goes up and not out here. And so I got to make sure that that front part matches what comes out under the bottom of the hat. So your head doesn't stick way over the top of the top of the hat. You got to make sure those match together. Okay, starting to get there, I think. Just rotating it from side to side so that I'm keeping some kind of symmetry. I don't want one being deeper than the other, farther out or whatever, but I want them to be roughly about the same side from one to the other. So that's where we're at. We're about the same depth here as we are here. And I've started to narrow it down, so I've got a point. I don't have a real sharp point because I want to leave that nose fairly flat. So the diamond part that I'm talking about, that I talked about earlier, the edge of the cheekbones are going to be the part on a man's face, other than the nose, that sticks out quite a bit. So my cheekbones will be right here, and the eyebrows right here. And the nose is going to be somewhere right in here. Okay. I realize I'm doing this fairly quickly because I've done, well, 400 bolos, and I've done how many other faces. Anyway, when I talk about this being the farthest point out, I want to carve in. I'm going to go in somewhat, remembering that diamond shape that we're looking at. So I'm going in from about the cheekbone out. You can see that. You can see that diamond right there that I'm starting to get in. I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going from the diamond, the outermost part of the cheekbone or the diamond up. This tool that I'm using, this V tool, I got it from Drake way back when, and it's probably one of my oldest tools. I think it's one of my 3 oldest tools, still going, almost close to 30 years. So tools, if you take care of them, will last you quite a while. Okay, I'm gonna put that down and take a look at it, see what I needed to clear, if there's anything I need to clean up. I can see this bottom right here. You can't see it underneath, but this goes in a little bit more than this one. So I'm going to peel some of that back with my fishtail gouge. Try not to flick too much up around that brim. Okay. There's a ridge right there that I don't like, so I'm going to flatten that out just a little bit. I don't need to take off much, but I need to smooth that ridge out. Okay. Alrighty then. Where do I want the bottom of those ears to be? Generally more than halfway or less than halfway down. So if I put that nose right there, straight over here, there's the bottom of that ear. So if you can see that measurement from here to here is smaller than from here to here. Well, I'm going to take that bottom piece off, leave that ear sticking out. But if I make a mistake here, the more wood I take off, the more I have to fix. So I'm going to take a V-tool and I'm going to eyeball where that ear is going to go. I look at that, I can see that here's the bottom of this ear. Here's the bottom of this ear. Now I can tell this ear is wider than that one, so I'm going to take care of that by moving back just a little bit. Okay, so this one dropped down just a little bit, so I'm going to move it up about 2 millimeters, somewhere like that. And if I eyeball it here, that'll be close enough. Okay, so follow along as I shorten those ears. The mark right there. Okay, I did one side. I want to see if they line up this way, and it looks like the lines line up, so I'll be okay there. Okay. I want this line right here to line up with that line right there, and it looks like it does. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, grab that small fishtail gouge. I want to flop around on my hands worse than I want to. I want to come in here with my knife, and I don't want to take off any more above that line, but I can take off the whole thing all the way down. Because I want to, this is going to be the cheek, not the cheek, this is the jawline. Somewhere around in here is going to be where we cut in for the jaw. I like doing these bolo tie faces mainly because it's good practice. For those of you that want to do caricature carving, we run the risk of everything looking the same. In fact, I hate that for myself, that I can tell when something is mine. But I know there's a lot of other people who I can look at their carving or look at a carving and know whether that's a so-and-so or a this and that. And I think that's okay if you want to stay, and that's your thing. If you're into gnomes and that's what you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there is. For me and mine, for me and my skills and whatever, I want to make sure that I can do a carving that doesn't necessarily look like all the other carvings I've done. So nothing wrong with all your carvings looking like, you know, they cut out of the same pattern or they all from the same family. I got no problem with that. For me, I don't want everything to look the same. So these are good practice. I can practice them and make them bottle stoppers. I can make them refrigerator magnets. I can make them pins. Do anything you want to with it. In fact, I'm looking at a carving over here that I found in an antique shop. This was attached to a pin, so it's a pin that you put on your shirt. When I talked about Bill Birch earlier, this was one of Bill Birch's ones, and I saw on a Facebook group that they were comparing what's the smallest one that they could come up with. This that they could show. This one is altogether about 2.5 inches tall, and I think somebody had a 1 3/4 one, but that's a small face. Now I've seen a lot of these Bill Birch ones with the big wide sloping hat like that, but that's a lot of detail to put into this small of a face. So it gives you an opportunity to practice. This is number 10342, done by Bill Birch when he lived in Spokane, Washington. So that was 10,000 out of 80,000 or whatever, how many ever he did. I don't know. Unfortunately, I never met the guy. I would have loved to have sat at his knee and talked to him about scouting, because I think we both feel the same way, that scouting should be a opportunity for us to mold the youth of the world. And it would have been fun to hear some of his stories, although you can find him online. You can hear some of his stories. Okay, anyway, I could pontificate on a lot of things from day to day. I try not to, because I figure my family's heard it, my friends have heard it, and new people probably don't want to hear it. Anyway, that's where we're at. Okay, I'm still leaving that brim where I want it to be real thick, because I don't want to get too thin. I have broken too many, and you can watch one of my videos I did on how to fix a broken hat brim on a cowboy. You know how hard it was to do a carving and then intentionally break it so I could show it repaired. Well, it worked out okay, but it broke my heart to spend all that time and then break it, because I tried several times to break it one way or the other. Finally, I just stepped on it, I think. Just killed me. All right, anyway, so on this one, we got the diamond here. We're going to get the diamond down here, and then we're going to put in the nose and the face and the mustache right in here. It's still a fairly big carving when I look at it and compare it to my original here. You can see where the brim is here, how far up that face goes. So I can take off a lot of face right here and still make it look like roughly about this same thing. So we'll end up doing some of that, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Okay, get our pencil marker out and promptly throw it in the floor. Okay. Here's the centerpiece, center line. Come on, work with me. Center line right there. Let me take a moment and pause. I want to apologize to those of you who watch some of my videos, and I'm way over here, and I'm carving down in my lap, and you can't see. You can hear what I'm saying, but you can't see what I'm doing. I'm only apologizing to a degree, because this is not about you doing every stroke the way I do it. This is not about you carving the way I carve. This is about how you carve. And if I pull it down here and you can't see it for 30 seconds or whatever, that's an opportunity for you to learn how to do it your way, or to learn how to do it my way, thinking the way I do, and knowing exactly what you can hear me, and then you can translate that to what you're doing. You should not be trying to carve exactly like I do. You should be carving the best way you can, the things you want to do. And if you miss a step or two, no big deal. Figure it out. This isn't about showing you how to do every single step. This is about showing you how to do your brand of carving. And so I get kind of frustrated when people, like I'm carving in a class, and I'll show them that, and they grab it out of my hand because they have to see everything that I've done. And if I say something or a step or two, I didn't hear that, can you repeat it? Well, okay. That's a third world problem, right? I'm trying not to argue and gripe about that kind of stuff. But the reality is, if I'm helping you learn how to carve, you should be able to bring your brand of whatever you do. How would you get up under that brim? How would you do this? How would you do that? I might do it one way, you might do it another, and that's the whole essence of learning. You're learning how to do different things, or the same thing a different way. And I want you to take that into consideration when you do this, that this is not about you carving exactly like I do. Okay. I'll put the soapbox over in the corner, and I'll ignore it from now for the rest of the time. I'll try not to pontificate too much. I found out I was going to make this smaller, and so what I'm going to do is make the ears. I'm going to bring those ears up about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. Not much, but I just want to make those ears just a little bit smaller in terms of top to bottom. So I'm going to go in about 1/8 of an inch straight in, because I want to make this face a little bit smaller than I already have. I don't like a big one, and in fact some bolo ties that I've gotten, traded, won, bought, whatever, they're just too big for me. In other words, they hang down on my chest instead of hanging down here at the bottom of my sternum. They hang out somewhere down near my belly button. So, which is good, hides my butt, my belly, hides my fat. But the reality is, I don't want you to say I don't want that one because it's just way too big. It drags out too much. So anyway, getting that head, those ears. Let me get that out of the way. It's too shiny. Getting those ears in the way I want to go. Now that's going to help me come out the bottom and kind of wedge it out. So I'm going to go from the outside across the face. And I'm basically just giving that bottom of the head a jawline shape. Ordinarily I would go from here, the line here, down and down, but I'm going to not quite take off as much as I had done in the past. See how we're starting to wedge that down? I still have way too much here, and ordinarily if I was just here by myself, I'd take it out in the garage and I would cut off that last ½ inch or whatever, but I'm not going to do that. I want to show you how to do it with a knife, because not all of you have a bandsaw. Not all of you have a scroll saw. Not all of you have big tools. I was carving cowboys a few years back and sold a few, and the guy from England said, hey, you know what? We're watching your video. It's wonderful. We're having a great time. But we don't have bandsaws here. None of us in our group have bandsaws. How would we carve your cowboy, 6-inch cowboy, without a bandsaw? We don't have a way to cut it out. And I thought, okay, I'll buy one and I'll ship it to you. No, not really. What I ended up doing was showing how to start from a block. And I don't have a 2x2x6 block. I see one across the studio there, but I don't have one here. And it gave me an opportunity to redefine that. How would I redefine that opportunity? I'm going to switch tool. This one's getting a little bit dull. I want to get another one. Let me see if this Helvey. This Helvey's about 2 inches, which is longer tool than I use. Oh, it's 2 1/4. 2 1/4. It's a larger tool than I normally use, simply because that blade, I'm carving and see how far that blade gets over towards my fingers. I don't like that. So anyway, we'll see what we get here. This is probably the best knife I got for doing this. I want to take off some of this on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to switch knives on this because that's a little bit too much blade sticking out from where I want to carve. So I'm going to switch to this is a Badger State blade. It's a shorter one. Excuse me. This one is about 1.5 inches. So I've cut off a good part. And it's a heavier blade. And so I can feel like I can get more of a bite to it than that. I use tools from just about everybody. I've got some Helveys, I've got OCC, I've got Flex Cut, I got Drake, I've got Pinewood Forge, Ramelson's, you name it, and I think I've either bought it, sold it, or collected it. At the same time, I was saying I wasn't a collector. Okay, and I'll tell you, I've had some bad knives in my hand. I won't mention the name because they don't deserve to have that. I don't want to say anything bad about somebody, but I can tell you there are some manufacturers out there that everything that they turn out is gold. And I think you know who I'm talking about, because most of you, when we talk about it, a lot of people say, well, how many of those do you have? How many of the blanks that I have? And would I be willing to sell some or whatever? Well, number one, I don't resell my knives unless I, well, like every once in a while I'll look around and I'll say, wow, I got a lot of tools. I need to get rid of some of those, and so I do that and sell them in local to our group. But some of these tools are really good. I like this. I like this Badger State blade. The only thing I don't like is it's longer for my hand than I need it. So I asked Abby and Ashton and Libby if they would make me a smaller one. They did, and I enjoy using it, but I'm afraid to use it because it's a little more fragile. They said they'd replace it, but I don't use it a whole lot. I just got it here a few weeks ago. So anyway, all right. Okay, we're getting down to where we're going to start adding a lot of the details to it. So I took a little bit of this tie off here, and I'm carving across grain, so it's a little more difficult. Usually when you're carving across grain, you want a thinner blade, a sharper blade. So I've got a thinner, sharper, smaller one, heavy like this one, and it probably would slice through that end grain. Yep, slices through that end grain a little better because it's like carving with a razor blade. It's so thin that it slices through the wood a little bit easier than if you're trying it with a bigger, thicker, heavier blade. Anyway, ordinarily if I would have looked ahead, I would have realized that was too long and I need to be somewhere up here. But give me a couple minutes and we'll trim that thing down. I keep covering up my dot. There's my dot for the middle of my page, and I keep covering it up and moving around, and I apologize. It's a bad habit of mine. I'm trying to break it, but I get so excited about carving, and I get so excited about teaching y'all how to do what I'm doing that I forget to look down at that. And I guess I need a big red X to see there. But anyway, if you can't see it, you can figure it out. I got faith in you. I've watched you carve at places, and I've met you, and I know what you can do. So just do it. Just make it happen. Make it better. For those of you that talk about not using gloves and not using protection or whatever, I can tell you the place you're going to make a mistake is here, top and bottom. And why is that? End grain. There's a lot of end grain you take off on the top, and there's a lot of end grain you take off on the bottom. And so that is where you're going to go. You're going to struggle, and it's going to pop out on you. And if you don't have protective gear, and I know you're probably a better carver than I am, but if you don't have some semblance of protective gear, it's just a matter of time. And I hate to say that. I hate to be a defeatist and a doomsayer, but it's just a matter of time before that knife slips, because not all wood is the same. This knife will slip on a piece of wood, and all of a sudden you're looking at a dire situation. You either got to go to the emergency room or the clinic on the corner. But worse than that, you got to go tell your spouse about it. You're like, well, look what I did, and I'm sorry. Can you help me out? Run me to the hospital. I can guarantee you from experience, that's not a good conversation. To or from the hospital, it's not a good experience. So, just so you know, protect yourself. It doesn't take that long to stop and put on protective gear, and it's a good idea to do so, and it's a good idea to get into the habit of it. I know you lose the tactile sense of holding the wood and carving or whatever, but I can tell you from seeing too many people, I've seen people cut all the way through their hand. I've seen them sit on their blade. I've seen them drop one, and as guys, we close our legs when we drop something. You gals kind of open up your dress or your pants or whatever. It's an ingrained thing. If you don't believe me, read Tom Sawyer. He explains it in that book. Anyway, okay, we're getting down to where we're going about to put some facial features on there. I want to trim back that front right there, back a little bit more so that it matches that hat, because some of that hat's going to come off too. So I'm going right through where the eyebrow is going to be. And we better ought to draw those in so we know where we're going. Okay. Gloves off because I can't draw with gloves on. Here's the center line, the symmetry line. I'm going to go right across over here. I don't need to have a heavy brow up here where I've got eyebrows and everything like that. I will take some of that wood off under here to give it a little bit more room here, but not much. And then somewhere about right here, it's going to be the nose. Take those corners off. I got a halfway decent nose there. The mustache, you got a pretty pronounced mustache, almost a Sam Elliott mustache for Baden Powell. Make sure I come all the way out on both sides the same way, down the same spot. Okay, gear on. 33 minutes. We're going to do about another 5 minutes here, and then we'll get to the next video where we kind of put a lot of the finishing features in there. Okay. I drew it in, so I got a mental image of where it's going to be. I want to go from the point of the nose up. When I talked about taking out some of that brim right there, that's what I meant right there. I'm going to take some of that brim, move that hat back just a little bit, move the forehead back just a little bit. Give me some room to do that. And also including that wedge part. I flattened it off here, so I got to go back and get that wedge part back in there. I can always redo my lines, recut, redraw my lines. I hope you can see that. We got a little bit more of a wedge in there. So we've brought that down quite a bit from our original piece, which was way out like that. Okay, draw lines again, put them back in there. Eyebrow, nose. Okay, now for that, what I want to do, I also want to remember before I get too far away. Let's go back and work on these ears just a little bit. I'm going to bring in the sideburn here, sideburn right there, sideburn on the other side. Make sure they match up. They do. Take a smaller V tool, like this Ramelson here. I've had this Ramelson for quite some time. I like it for doing things like this. Why'd I do that? That's not the tool I wanted. That is not the tool I wanted. I wanted this gouge here. And I know there's numbers here, and I can't tell what they are. I think it's a 47. I don't know for sure, but they're hard to read. Okay, you know what, I did want that. I was doing the sideburns. Duh, dummy. Okay, before I do that, I want to do the ears. So let me do this. And take my knife, and I'm gonna carve at a 45-degree angle. Getting ahead of myself here a little bit. I started to do this, and then I was going to do something else, and then I was going to do something else, and now I'm back. Okay. Flatten those ears out. Cut out the top right here so that the hat's not sitting under, the ears are not sitting under the hat. Okay, we got that little bit right there. I want to take that line off right here. And I want to go to the back of the head. Cut in the ear right there and the ear right here. And then I'm going to undercut. No, I don't want to make that ear too big. trim it out so it's not so square. It's going to be wider at the top than at the bottom. So I'm going to come in here a little bit here. And I want to make sure that I'm carving up my ears. Great big ears. I don't have to make them that big, so I'm going to take a little bit off back here. This is the back of the head. Okay. It's a big square ear, so I'm going to cut out a few little bit of chips here on the top and a few more on the bottom, and then undercut that bottom piece so that it sticks out just a little bit here. Now I am going to take, thought I got those tools all out earlier, but apparently I did not. So I'm going to take this, I like this big file. It's a number 9, and I'm just going to gouge out that ear. I tell you what the tools are so you know what they are and so you can see what you have. I am not an advocate for doing tools when you take a class where you're taking a lot of, you're having to buy a lot of tools. That happened to me in my first few classes that I took, and I ended up buying tools that were available at the store I was doing them at, and I ended up not using them because they weren't very good tools. There was a reason they had a lot of them still there, and they weren't very good tools. Learn the lesson. Okay. Ear, I want to trim that ear down just a little bit because it's real big hanging out here. I don't want it to be that big, and I don't want it to be that thick. It looks like one of those boxer's ears, I don't know what they call them, where they're really misshapen, and I don't want my Baden Powell to look like that. Take off that corner right there. Okay. Take off some more at the bottom because the ear is thinner at the bottom than it is at the top. Okay. We're going to call that one good. Here we are. Okay. Do the same thing to the other side. Sort of kind of about the same, not perfect, but I'm not worried about it being perfect. I'm going to take off that bottom a little bit more because it's a little bit long. Alrighty then. Come back in with our V-tool, with the gouge that I said I was going to use earlier, or V-tool, sorry. Cut across the bottom of the sideburn, and bring that cut all the way up to just under the hat. Okay. Same thing over here. Cut across the bottom of the sideburn. Follow that line all the way up to just under the hat. And then what I want to do, make a cut right at the bottom of that ear, and a cut at the bottom of that, or along the side of that sideburn, so that I can then peel back a little bit right there, make that sideburn stick out, and then follow that. I made a cut there, didn't I? Yep. Follow that with the tip of my knife all the way up there for sideburns. Okay. Same thing over here on the other side. Across the bottom, up the side. So then we'll come up here to the bottom of that sideburn. We'll come up here to the along the side of the sideburn. Okay. Take off the little fuzzies. We don't need those anymore. They work their purpose. All right. Grab that file tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight across this side, the eye sockets. I don't need to go too deep. These on these small faces, they don't need to be too big. I feel like I know what I'm doing because I sat up last night and I did one of these till late in the night, and then I woke up early and did some in the morning. Going to go right into that eye socket, straight across. And then I'll come back straight across, take that out. So now I got a flat eye socket in there. I'm going to trim that down to get that diamond shape back to my head. I'm going to need that here in just a little bit. I'm looking at the time. It says 43 minutes, so I'm going to call this one good. And we're going to see if we can't finish it up in the next video. I'll see you in part number 4, I think it will be. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in a few. All right, we're back. We're seeing if we can finish up this guy here soon. Because we're down to the face, we got to get the brim and the top of the hat, and we're good. So we're started here, or we ended here with the gouge. The little number, looks like a number 9, and we're gouging into the face in terms of making a facial plane for that. So I'm just going to go from the outside in. Okay. We're going to do that. And then I'm going to come down from the top of each of those eye sockets, just make it flat. All the way across. This is not a big face, so we don't have a whole lot of room for a lot of details. And so we're going to do it that way, where it's flat across, and then we'll make some changes as we go along. I'm going to come right up the side of the nose, what I had drawn in for the nose. What we did is just went from the bottom of the nose straight up into the eye socket without leaving a big mark. I'm going to come back out here to the outside, carve in, take out that little chip there. Do it here, we go in, carve out, chip there. Okay. I was looking for a specific tool that I use for this, and I think I may have found it right there. Pardon me, I can't find it, so I'll live without it. Anyway, we got an eye socket in there, and so now I'm going to trim that out to the outside. Just take a little bit of those harsh edges off. Same way here. And we've done that once. We're going to do it twice. Go right up into the eye socket right there, and come across. Right up into that eye socket. And come across. All right. I'm going to come down here on the front of the nose. Carve in at an angle, about 45-degree angle to that nose. Take that off. Do the same thing over here. Take that off. Okay. Just doing a little bit of cleanup here. Straightening up the side of the face. And now I'm going to go to the bottom of the nose. I'm going to carve right at the bottom of the nose, between the nose and this mustache. So we got a pretty big nose going on right now. We're going to take here and take some out at an angle. I'm going to trim down that nose a little bit because he doesn't have a really big nose. Okay, corner bottom, and then I'm going to go around the nostril, straight in. Just make it stop cut around the nostril. Come back in, you see that cut right there. And now I'm going to come in with the tip of my knife and clean out that a little bit more. Basically, I'm undercutting the nose. And then I'm going to come to the top of the nostril, go in, turn, and pop that little bit out right there. Same thing over here, come around the nostril. And come up the side of the nose. And then come back in here and take that part out too. Okay, so now I'm going to trim down this. We've got a really big mandible area, and I want to trim some of that back, leaving room for the mustache. All I'm doing is trimming down this face so that it's going to look smaller and not quite so bulky, because he wasn't a bulky person. Now I'm going to come up with this ridge right here around the side of the nose. Take that out. Same thing over here. Okay, and then I don't like the shape of that nose, so I'm going to trim it down just a little bit, take off the corner, and thin that nose out. And then I'm going to come up the side of the nose at an angle to give it shape. Match the other side. And there we go. Alrighty, I'm going to come across and further define those eye sockets since we carved up into them. I'm going to make room for them. Haven't decided whether we're going to paint them or carve them, but we might do one. We're going to do one of the other. Okay. Grab my marker. I want to draw it in the mustache. I've got carved spots there where it's hard to get the pin around, but we're going to do the best we can. There, we've got a mustache there. We still got a lot down here to the bottom, so I'm going to come in here, thick blade. And I'm just giving that jawline the shape that I want it to have. Taking out some of the bottom. I'm going to take some of that bottom out here. I want to bring it down here so it's got a thin jaw. Doesn't need to have a big thick one. So I'm going to creep up toward the ears. I usually have the TV on while I'm carving, and then when I go to do a class like this, I may have it on, but I don't have the sound. And right now, World Cup soccer is taking place, and so it's really hard not to want to have to check the TV all the time. Okay. Okay, that's a big hat on top of him. So I'm going to take some time to get that hat down. So I'm going to go up under the hat, and I'm going to start just trimming and making it smaller. It's thick and it sticks out quite a bit. So what I want to do is just go in here. I'm coming in with my fishtail gouge sideways. I mean sideways by going side to side rather than straight in. So I want to do that just to get started rounding or trimming the bottom part out. I want to take that heavy stuff from the top of the head and the bottom of that brim there. So I'm getting a little bit, I'm nudging it down, and I'm also going to come in here and do the same thing for the hat, for the head too. So I can use that fishtail gouge. I can come in here with my knife. It's easy to see with the fishtail gouge because I'm coming in at a sideways, so I get a good look at it. When I'm carving it this way, I have to carve it that way, and I can't see it. So I'm going to switch back to my fishtail gouge, and I'm going to go straight into the head. So what I'm trying to do is just come in here and trim it down. Hopefully you can see that. But I'm just trimming toward the hat because we want to get the brim thinned out a little bit more. Staying right around my dot. It gets a little bit off. So I'm trying to stay with my dot a little bit. I keep wanting to reach over and grab my fishtail gouge or my knife and do that, but I think I'll do better with this here. Getting there. Just taking time because this is in grain. Going cross grain across that head. Grain is running up and down, and I'm going that way. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to remove all that wood that I need to remove. I want to go straight in rather than go in and curve up. I want to go straight in, and that's hard to keep doing. It's 90 something degrees outside, and I got the air conditioner on, but it's still warm in here. Trim that crown up a little bit because it was a little bit shorter over here than it was on the other side. Okay. Take my knife and trim up these things in here. Fuzzies, we call them. we're getting it. Still looks fairly bulky, thick. So I'm going to use that short, thick one. Just come back along the edge of it. Apologize, I got a little bit off the camera there, but I didn't do anything other than just come in here and trim that brim out. So didn't do anything there that you didn't see. Go under the brim, trim that a little bit more so we can get it smaller, thinner. Alright, I think we might be getting closer. It's thicker up here at the front, so we'll take some of that off of there. For some reason, I don't know why it keeps looking thicker on the top here, top brim. I'll use my fishtail gouge a little bit more. Alright, I think I'm going to call that good right there. We could certainly piddle, play, and putter with that all afternoon, but I want to get it to where I need to go. Alright, to carve that campaign hat, it's got to come up so far and then curve in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay over the top. I'll bring in the curve a little bit later. So I'm just going to lay over the top like that. Okay, see how we're laying that over there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start coming up from the bottom part of it, curve it. Again, this is the end grain, cross grain, so you're really going to struggle with that. If you want to, feel free to come in there with a gouge, good size gouge, bigger than that one, smaller than that one, but it would give you the cut you need as well. It would allow you to curve it up as you carve, you curve it toward yourself. And clean that off across the top. Okay. I want to follow that around the hat band, so I'm not going to worry about it. It doesn't need to be too much trouble, but I'm just going to draw straight across, cut so I get that hat band in there. Go to a slightly larger one, that little one's digging in. And then I'll come down to that from the top just to give it a little bit more shape, like that. There's his campaign hat. Okay, I'm going to come back here. Brim's a little bit wide in terms of sticking out in front of the face. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of that back. Don't want it to look too overwhelming. Okay, clean up a little bit here. Alright, now I want to take that same gouge or V-tool and I want to carve up to the nose around the mustache. This tool has recently been sharpened, so it's easy to carve with. Love it. Trim down that mustache a little bit on the front. Alright, I want to take this gouge here and go right under the bottom of the mustache so I can give him a lip. Just enough to where he looks like he's got a lip. Don't have to worry about great big bushy mustache. But we do want to make sure that we give him just a little bit of a lip sticking under there. And come back here to the corner, or to the side. Grab a bigger tool. Come back here to the side. And we want to bring that mustache, or that skinny jaw, back down. Same way over here. Alrighty then. A couple more steps. On a small face like this, I don't know necessarily I need to add every detail and every wrinkle. I'm going to do the eyes and leave those there when I'm done. Let me get a smaller gouge there. A real small drake gouge that I can bring up side of the nose. And I make a line across the top for the eye socket there. Bring it up here, right along to the nose, and bring that out right there. So now what I want to do, I want a really small V-tool. So I'm going to do some eyes. I decided we would do eyes. And so I like to draw them first, at least some lines. And so I'm going to draw from the bottom, from where the eye socket comes in. Draw them with a pencil first, and then draw them with my marker. sticking to my glove. Okay, right there. And right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make these eyes as simple as I can. I want to go straight in with the point of the knife, and I want to drag it out a little bit more. Straight in, drag it out horizontally. What that's going to do is give me an opportunity to carve up to that line and down to that line, thicker towards in here, and then I can make that deeper in there in the socket. And then when I'm done with it, what I would do is I would paint black back in there so it looks like the eye recedes back in there. Same thing here. Straight in, drag it out horizontally. One more time, drag it out horizontally. So now I'm going to come back, I'm going to take off that little bit, and I'm going to go down in there in the eye socket, tear duct, and bring that out. Because what I'm looking for is a really deep recess in there that I can just put paint in, or even a marker, and it looks like he's got eyes. Okay, we got some cleanup to do here with the nose and marks aside and all that. But essentially, you've got it done carving here. Take my small V tool, scratch in some hair on his mustache. Take as much time as you need to do that. You want to make sure it shows up his mustache, because he had a prominent, Baden Powell had a very prominent mustache, and it looked well trimmed and well done and well groomed. So make him look like he's a proper English gentleman. Undercut the mustache just a little bit, so it looks like there's an opening between his mustache and his mouth. Okay, I'm going to take a V tool and just make some marks here for his sideburns. They don't have to be a whole lot. You don't need much there. I'm not going to worry about eyebrows because they're just, it wouldn't add a whole lot. I could paint them in if I wanted to. Like I said, these are great practice pieces for doing faces. You can make them into bottle stoppers. You can put them in refrigerator magnets. You can basically do what you want to with them. And I would call this about now. We're done. You got some cleanup pieces to do, and you know how I do that if you've watched my videos along the way. So So you know what I do to clean all this up and make it pretty. I want to separate between the eyes itself, between the eyebrows. Separate that a little bit. I believe I would call this one done. I believe we need to put a fork in him and move on to the next project. Put your questions in the chat if you've got anything to ask or say, or need some help on anything, let me know. I'll have a short video on painting. It won't take that long to paint this one. And we'll have a good old time painting and making Baden Powell look like Baden Powell. Appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you staying tuned. Please subscribe and like if it's helpful to you. And give me all your feedback. I listen to and read all of it, whether I like it or not. And it's the only way to get any better is to listen to feedback. So I'll see you in the next video. We'll paint this one, and then we'll see where we go after that. Appreciate you being along here, and thank you very much. See you next time. All right, we're back for the final installment of carving the Boy Scout Bolo Tie with Lord Baden Powell, the founder of Scouting. I started with these colors. The hat's going to be traditional burnt umber. The hat band is going to be black. Hair is white, including the mustache and the sideburns. The face is going to start off with refined linseed oil, and then we're going to color it with flesh, add a little bit of shading flesh, and add a touch of dark flesh where we want highlights. And then we're going to antique at the end with buttermilk. I have all these laid out on my palette right here, so we can just jump right into it. I'm going to water these down because I don't like using straight paint. Depending on what I'm using, I will do about 8 to 10 drops. On something like water, or white, sorry, I use fewer drops because I want that to be almost full strength. And then I've got the flesh. I got the shading flesh. And I have the dark flesh. I'm doing it about 8 to 10 drops on each one of those. I have learned over the years that I love the color of this refined linseed oil. I don't like how hard it is to get off. You have to push down really hard and turn the handle, turn the lid. Anyway. And then you have to do it again. So, what a pain. Either way, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to take a bristle brush, this one right here, and I'm not using much so I don't dip it out in here into my well. I just go and I just get just a little bit on there. And I'm going to paint the face, and I don't worry about eyes or hair or whatever. I just want to paint the face. Get over here in my area of influence, so you'll know what I'm looking at. And if I splash this linseed oil somewhere where I don't plan on it, it's okay. It's not a big deal. I did take the time before I do this to go out into my garage, out into my studio, and use a rotary tool with some bristle pads on it that I create from the sheets of bristle sanding sheets. They're not actually sanding sheets, but they're refined sheets. They make it clean up a little bit. So I do that first. I don't do anything else until I get that on there, because I want that to get on there and I want it to soak in. I'll just lay this off to the side, and I'm going to grab another one, because the next thing I'm going to do is the hat, and I'm going to use a little bit of traditional, that's black, sorry. Use a little bit of traditional burnt umber, not much, and I want to water it down because this is my dark brown that I use for most of my carvings. I have light browns, I have medium browns. This is what I use primarily on the dark brown, so you'll see what it does when I put it on there. See how it turns brown? You can see the difference between the traditional burnt umber at full strength and the black over here. So I'm just going to paint the hat, and if I get some on the hat band, it's not a big deal. I'm going to go back over it with a black, so it'll hide whatever I splash over there. It's not a big deal. And by the time I antique this anyway, it's not going to look pristine anyway. It's just going to look like a old campaign hat by an old scouter who just enjoyed wearing that hat, and I've got one of them. I don't have the campaign hat. I just never felt that it fit my head. So I've used the newer one that they came up with years ago, where it's more like a fedora. I like that one a little bit better. It fits my head better. So it's been a choice of mine to use that rather than the campaign hat. And part of it is because of the cost of it. The campaign hat was pretty expensive when I got into scouting. And over the years, friends of mine would buy me things when I had a birthday or whatever, and so I got the first fedora style hat from friends of mine who bought it for me when I became Scoutmaster. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm just painting this. It's a watered down version of paint I use. If you've watched me for much, you know that I use Deco Art Americana, simply because it works great for what I want to do. Several people have tried to change me. My son worked at an art store here in Boise for a while, and he really enjoyed working there. And he was always trying to get me to try this new stuff here and this new stuff there. And I'm thinking, I got a bunch of these and they work for me, and I don't know that I want to change, so I'm not going to. So got the brown. We'll dip back into here. Oh, let me get some paper towels out of here. Usually as I'm painting, come on, peel off there. What I do is I have a couple of paper towels folded in half over here like this. And when I use the brush, I lay it over there, and that way it's always readily available when I need to do it. And then that way I can come in here and I can wash off that. I'm washing off the brown. Gonna go to the black. And again, I don't need much of the black. I could probably switch to a smaller brush. This is a round one and it works perfectly for me. I've watered it quite a bit, so you'll see a little bit of tint there for the black. And again, I'm gonna antique this when I'm done with some buttermilk. And I rarely use the burnt umber with linseed oil that some people do. I just don't find the results that I want out of it. I've done a carving. It's sitting out here behind me. I'm not going to show it because the painting didn't turn out as well as I wanted it to, so I'm not going to use it. All right, I'm going to jump over into, and I'm going to use a flat, I think it's called a flat shader. So it's not very big, but I want to put on flesh. So again, this is still a little bit wet from the linseed oil that I sprayed on it or poured on it. So I'm going to mix this well here, the flesh, and I'm going to test it on the bottom. That always gives me a good indication of whether it's too dark or too light. The bottom soaks it in. This looks like a good base color. It's not too pink. I can water it down if it is, but it's actually a fairly good color for what I'm looking to do. And I just put this all over everything. I don't worry about whether it's on the hair or in the eyes or whatever. I'm just going to paint that on there. Make sure you have good lighting when you're painting, because I can tell you bad lighting won't show up what you need. Good lighting will, and it'll give you a chance to do that and get it the right color that you're looking for. I've lately been having some medical issues. I can't sleep very well at night, so I end up painting at night. And sometimes it might be 3 in the morning, and it might be 1, it might be midnight, but I end up painting at night. Not really my favorite thing to do, but I don't want to waste time. I got things I'm doing. So, all right, I've splashed flesh all over the thing. Doesn't show up here because it's a white wood. I watered down the flesh quite a bit, but it's okay. It looks okay. I'm gonna then mix up the shading flesh, which is a little bit darker. And usually what I do when I get this, I got the flesh on there. Now what I'm going to do is go touch the flesh, touch the dark flesh, touch the flesh, touch the dark flesh. I want these colors to be leaning towards each other in terms of the color that they're going to be. So they have a little bit of each in each other. So I'm then going to take that color, the shading flesh, and I want to see what it does. Now if you see, maybe you can see that, but you can see how it's doing it. It's giving it like a pale pinkish color that I put on every piece of skin. Now, I get asked a lot, well, how do I do my painting? And I don't know how to answer that because each thing that I do seems to be a little bit different. In other words, one of them I'm heavier on the color and one I'm not. And it just depends on what I'm working on in terms of how I'm going to do that. So I've done that, and if I feel like at any point the color is too strong, dip your paint brush into the water, come back here and scrub it off. This is acrylic paint. It dries fairly quickly, but it's also not hard to get something off there if you want it as well. All right, now I'm going to go to the dark flesh, which is way down here at the bottom. I'm going to mix that really well. I don't want pure pigment going on the painting. Okay, wash out my brush, dry it off, and then I want to come back here with just a little bit, and I'm going to put it in here in the middle of the well, and I'm going to add water to it until I feel like it's watered down to the point where I want, which is fairly watered down. Now I'm going to touch it on the nose. I'm going to touch it on the cheekbones, and then I realize that's not enough, so I'm going to come back in here and put a different little dab of it. I want to get it in the ear. I want to get it under the neck. I want to get a little bit of that in the shadows, but I'm not going to coat it seamlessly. I want to do a stretch here and a little bit there and a little bit over here, and I'm not covering it completely. I'm just dabbing it on in a few spots. So you can't see it very well because of the way the color is and the way I've watered it down, which I want to do. But essentially I have this color that I'm looking for that basically approximates what an elderly Caucasian man would look like. It's got color in some spots, reddish in some spots, pinkish kind of in some spots, but we're going to leave it there. I'm going to turn on my hairdryer for just about 15 seconds, maybe 10. So if you are sensitive to sound, turn that sound down. I'll give you a few seconds to turn the sound down. And I'm just going to dry it to make sure that I can move on to the next thing. Holding that with my hand while I blow hot air on it really warms my fingers up. So, all right, so we got white here. I'm going to grab that same kind of flat shader brush, make sure it's cleaned, make sure it's wiped off, and then I'm going to do a dab of paint. I don't need a lot, but I'm going to do that paint right on his mustache because Lord Baden Powell had a very white mustache. So So that's what I want to do, is leave that impression there. I don't need a whole lot of it, but I do want it to be pure white. Sorry you didn't see that, but I just basically put white paint on there. So again, if I do something that you didn't see, sometimes you got to extrapolate and figure out what it is. I said I put white paint on there, and that's exactly what I did. Didn't get enough paint to leave on the sideburns. And then I want to get a small brush, because I want to give some eyebrows, but I don't want to use a big paintbrush. I'm going to use one that has 3 hairs and some air, basically is what it is. There's not much there. I borrowed that from Bob Ross. He used to say just three hairs and some air. So I'm going to put that right across the eyebrow. Again, this white paint is pretty full strength. It's not completely full strength, but it's close. I only added a little bit of water to it. Okay, I'm going to go back over the mustache and fill in the blanks, because using it with a big brush leaves a little bit to be desired. So I'm going to put that white on here, go out to the end of the mustache. I don't have hair back here behind his head, so that white has soaked in. I don't have to worry about painting the back of the head because there's no hair there. And we're going to put some more white paint there. Got a little bit of a smile. Oh, I want to put some white in there too. I'm going to do a little bit of white in here. I don't want much. I don't need a whole lot of white in there, but I do need some. Again, because this paint is wet on wet, I'm getting a lot of color when I put it on there, and then it blasts to the inside of the wood and gets dark. It gets lighter. On the bottom of that eye, I want to take a little bit of that white off, and a little bit of the white off right here. Okay. Hair dryer again for a few seconds. A lot of times when you use that hair dryer and you go to heat the paint up, it draws the paint up. So as you can see, this was white up here where I had the eyebrow. It drove it inside the wood, so I'm going to have to go back here and add a little bit more. And we'll mix it up a little bit more. It's coming out real runny, which means very little color. Alrighty then. Now, what I want to do is get some buttermilk. So the buttermilk, I'm not going to put that stuff on full strength. I'm going to dab it, and then I'm going to swish it all over the place. And usually I use a brush that looks something like this, kind of like a makeup brush, for lack of a better word. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it in here. Here's my buttermilk. It's a good color for adding adding facets. Dip it in there. Make sure I got it all over the end of the paintbrush. And then I'm going to take about 90% of that off, maybe 95. Grind it in there. You can always add more, but when you have too much, it's hard to get less on there. And I'm just going to drag it across. See how it picks up those facets like that? I'm not trying to leave a whole lot of paint on there. I'm leaving enough to bring out the facets, enough to bring out the creases in the hat. Because we don't want this to look like a hat that just came out of a box, shipped over on the train. We want to make sure what we're doing looks a little bit realistic, because if you'll take a look at your sleeve in the light, you'll see that at every fold it gets a little bit darker and does a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or a little bit lighter. And you gotta take that into consideration when you're painting. Sometimes you get paint over here a little bit, over here it's slopped over there. You can always use a little bit of spit and rub it off. Okay, wash that out, dry it off. And now what I want to do is just give it a little bit of indication of an eyeball in there. I want to put some dark down in the bottom of that, and then pull a little bit of that dark out as well, because I don't want it to be too dark, like he's been, he's taking some hits to the head, but I also don't want to leave it to where it's just all pure color of face. So again, that tiny little brush. What I'm going to do is, if you remember when we carved down in the tear duct, I put little drops of paint in, I put little cuts in there. So I'm going to get a little bit of paint on that brush. I'm going to go right down into that tear duct. Careful, careful, careful. And pull it out. Down in that tear duct. Pull it out. Now if you want to, you can brush most of that off. Come here and add a little bit on the top. Just gives it another little shadow up there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of an eyeball. So I got a little bit of dark down in there. I'm going to have a little bit of an eyeball coming off of there. Get down in there. I missed it the last time on this one. And then I'm going to get that dark line on the bottom. I don't like that dark line on the bottom of his eye. So I'm just going to wash that off. And if you can see that you've made a mistake, you now have the chance to fix that. I got a little too much black over here, so I'm going to go back over to the white. And I got to be real careful, because I got to bring more of that white out. Like that. And then leave that black down in there. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a second. In fact, I'm going to hit it with a hairdryer. Watch your ears. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up here in my box. I have stylus up here. I have a lot of these little styluses that I use for making dots, small impressions of a dot. So grab one out of there, and I'm going to go back to the lid of my white, because I want this to be full strength. And what I'm going to do is put a little highlight in that eye. I need to get a little bit of paint on the tip of my brush, tip of my stylus, and then I'm going to just find a flat spot, and then up in the upper corner, if the paint that you're putting it on is still wet, it won't do. It won't give you a dot. So get a little bit more. See that dot there? I'm going to put that dot in the corner of his, or the upper part of his eye. Do another one over here for the other eye as well. Got to get more paint on there, otherwise it won't stick. And I notice that I still have a little bleed over of that black, so I'm going to fix that. Again, this is more about knowing how to fix your issues than it is about making it perfect to start with. It's a whole lot better than when I started. There we go. All right, that concludes this series on carving the bolo tie with Lord Baden Powell, Robert SS Baden Powell, the founder of scouting in England. And then there were several men that brought it to America. The only thing I would do after this is let it dry. I usually let it sit overnight. And then what I do is I take some Minwax polyurethane warm satin. I don't want gloss. I don't usually want a semi-gloss, although there's times when I do, when it's like metal or something. But I would do the paint. I would do I would not do the paint. I would do this spray stain over top of this, and then he's going to get a bolo tie to go with it. And what I would do with the bolo ties is I square off the ends, the tips at the end of the bolo tie, and I make it like a pyramid. There's 4 sides to those pyramids. Let me see if I've got one down here. 4 sides to a pyramid, and I write the 4. I don't have one handy, and I put the other ones away. Anyway, it's got 4 sides on the tips of the bolo cord, and I write the 4 duties that a scout has. He has first, number 1, duty to God. Number 2, duty to country. Number 3, duty to others, and number 4, duty to self. So they have 4 duties that they have to keep up with when they're scouts to do it right, and that is God, country, self, and others. I put that on my tips, and they glue them on there, and then run the cord through the bolo tie, and then you have a bolo. Don't forget to sign it, because this is yours, so that people know. People want to collect from known creators. And so right on the back, I've already drilled the hole. Right on the back of it, your name and whatever else you want to put on there. I put my name, I put the date, and I put the number of them, and this is number 413 or 414, something like that. Hope you've enjoyed this series. I really enjoyed doing bolo ties. I do quite a bit of them, and I sell them on eBay if you want to find some. Look for me, and I'll sell some of mine every once in a while on eBay, and it helps pay the bills, and it helps buy more wood. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for staying around and hanging and carving with me and painting with Eric Owens Carving. Thanks a lot. See ya.